Perfect, thank you. Okay, can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes, we can see it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so again, we're here to talk about the Public Purpose Charged Schools Program and Energy Trust updates for 2024. And we'll do a little bit of introductions. And for those of you that are with us, please kind of come on screen so everybody can see you and say good morning. But I'm Christy Spoon with the Oregon Department of Energy, the school's program lead. Tracy?
Hi, I'm Tracy, and I also work with the Oregon Department of Energy with the SB 1149 Public Purpose Charge Program, mostly with the reporting.
Perfect. Christina?
And I'm Christina Skellinger. I'm the Energy Advisor for Energy Trust of Oregon for all school districts except for Eastern Oregon and Southern Oregon. Otherwise, I'm all of them. Colin?
Colin, did you join?
He's with us, but anyway, Colin Podelnik is my colleague. He is actually working with school districts both in Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon. So we tag team the state.
Great. And Brian, are you on?
I am. Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Morrison, and I'm the lighting specialist for the Energy Trust program. I cover all of Oregon. So if you're working on a lighting project, I'm your contact. So please reach out and let me know how I can help.
Great, thank you. Okay, Christina.
So we wanted to start out with just an overview of the state and what utilities we serve. So on the ODO SB 1149 side, they serve Portland General Electric in Pacific Power Territory. For Energy Trust of Oregon, we also serve Portland General Electric and Pacific Power Territory, but we also serve Northwest Natural, Cascade Natural Gas, and Avista territories. So there are some times in which, actually quite a few times in which we end up having one utility that is eligible but not another. So you might have a local PUD for electric, but you have Northwest Natural Gas. We can still help you. You just need to have one on the Energy Trust side.
Perfect. Okay, so again, fair warning for those of you that have listened to Christina and I talk and do this presentation or a similar presentation before. It's very similar. We have a lot of the same slides, but we, again, it's all about repetition, making sure that for those of you that have participated, that you're hearing all of the elements and understand it fully, or at least know who to contact if you have questions. And then there's quite a bit of turnover in school districts. So we want to make sure that, again, the main or the key elements of each of the programs are kind of highlighted. So starting off, the 1149 schools program serves the PGE and Pacific Power Territory, or those are the districts that are considered eligible within this program. And I should say, actually, Public Purpose Charge or Senate Bill 1149, it's all referred to as the same program, or essentially we've got a couple different names. They've kind of stuck around over time. So again, you may hear about the program as Public Purpose Charge Schools Program or Senate Bill 1149 program. I believe that even Pacific Power on the monthly payments and the revenues still have it labeled as Cool Schools. So sorry, there's just lots of names, but anyway, so the Public Purpose Charge and or Senate Bill 1149 funds, the amount, the dollars are sent directly to the districts that are considered eligible each month, and that will continue through January 1, 2036. And the districts that are considered eligible, it's all based on the educational facilities in your district, those elementary, middle school, high schools that are in that PGE and Pacific Power Territory, and the student counts within those facilities. So we work with the Department of Education to get the updated numbers every year. So that gives that district, every district, a percentage of the allocation. The eligible expenditures for 1149, we've got a few different expenditures that are considered eligible. Energy audits. So if there's an energy audit that you're paying for, through this program. We'll get into some other options here soon, but fleet audits, and we have some spreadsheets on our website for that. Energy efficiency measures within those facilities that are considered eligible. Zero emissions vehicles, that would include electric school buses. Again, that's within the districts that are considered eligible. And electric vehicle chargers. So those last two options are kind of new to the program, but again, those are eligible expenditures now in the program. And all of the energy measures that are identified and that would be eligible in this program have to be analyzed. They have to have some sort of energy savings. So again, those are on the energy measure side, not necessarily on the fleet or the zero emissions vehicle. That's a little different, but again, on the energy measures, they have to be analyzed. Christina.
So on the Energy Trust of Oregon side, there's the list of participating utilities that we discussed before. We can help you with all of your facilities. So you know, the SB 1149 program, the admin building or a transportation building or a facilities office isn't necessarily eligible, but on the Energy Trust side, it is. So if you have projects in those areas, we can still help you. There are 3 different types of incentives. We'll go through that in a little bit. Yeah, go ahead, Christy. Go to the next one.
There we go. So again, on the 1149 side, we refer to an SB 1149 maximum reimbursement amount, and that is given for, or an assessment or a dollar amount for each project, each measure. So it's based on the measure life of that piece of equipment or system, multiplied by the annual energy savings. So, and then the funds through the program, the public purpose charge or Senate Bill 1149 funds, are considered a reimbursement after the project has been completed. So the district pays for it ahead. You do the paperwork, you submit all the documentation, and then once the final cost data has been submitted and reviewed, then ODO will essentially send you an email saying the approved amount that can be reimbursed. The funding amounts that we are approving on projects, we can approve essentially looking at the estimated Senate Bill 1149 funds that we're, again, calculating, estimating through the end of the program. So again, that January 1, 2036 date is the end of the program. So we can look at approving dollars now for projects that you're doing now based on those future dollars that you'll get by the end of the program. And for those districts that have done projects, enough projects to spend out those funds all the way to January 1, 2036. Hold on one second. There's somebody, if you can mute, I'm getting some background noise. Anyway, so the districts that are considered spent out, there's about 5 districts total. So out of the 111 that are eligible, there's only 5 that have spent all of their funds in their account now, and the future dollars that we're estimating that they will get by that January 1, 2036 date. So if you are thinking that you're one of those districts and you haven't received an email from me like in the last couple of years, specifying that, then please reach out. We can always look at those dollars and get that figured out. The reimbursements are tracked by the districts. So I kind of reiterate this, that we work with you on the paperwork ahead, but once we send you that email that says you're now eligible to reimburse X dollars from your account, again, it's up to the district to transfer those or reimburse or track that. So if you have a reimbursement for $100,000, but you maybe don't have the full amount in your account, it's up to the district, but you can transfer what you have in the account, and then you can either do a transfer once a year, you can do it once a month, however often you choose as a district. It's just up to you to track that reimbursement so that you're only reimbursing the amount that was sent as an approval. Again, another question that kind of tends to come up, so we kind of added as a little note, a number of districts ask me all the time when you're reimbursing a project. So when you're actually transferring those funds back to wherever they need to go, the question has always come up, does it have to go back to the exact account that it came out of to pay for? And in the end, it's up to the district. Again, you guys have already paid for that project, so all we're doing is approving you to reimburse the funds that you've already spent. So we do recommend that you put it back into like a bond or a maintenance or a facility fund so that you can kind of continue those future projects in your facilities, but it's not a requirement. It's a recommendation. So it's just up to where the district wants to move that back. And the last bullet is just a couple of the annual reporting items that we have in this program. We do ask for an electric bill once a year of each of your facilities, and that's just to verify the eligibility. And then we also ask for utility data. So the utility data is monthly data for the whole fiscal year to be entered in our database. So those two. And then the last item is we will ask for your SB 1149 account balance at the end of a fiscal year. So those are kind of the three things that we typically will reach out. There's additional things like getting the project cost, but those are the three main that we typically will follow up with you once or twice a year. Typically that's Tracy. So anyways, Christina.
And for the Energy Trust of Oregon, we have our funding for HVAC controls upgrade, large type projects are based on cost effectiveness. So we take a look at the project costs and the energy savings, and we do a calculation, and that will tell us if you can receive a set incentive and then how much of an incentive. So we have a little bit of a process to go through that I'll get into more details about, but not every project will earn an incentive, but we find that many do. The incentives, once you complete your project and you've submitted your invoice, we tend to pay, we mail a check out to you, and I will email you. We'll email you to say, hey, there's a check on the way, and that's usually within 30 days of the receipt of the invoice.
Okay. This is just a quick slide to show everybody again the new elements with the zero emissions vehicles and chargers. There's a link on here for our webpage with the information. There's a few steps of things that you would do if you want to request to be able to use your funds for a zero emissions vehicle or a charger. These are kind of the up to amounts, kind of that SB 1149 max reimbursement amount. We just need to work with the district on, again, a fleet audit and some of the forms, which we can, kind of interact and work with you on. And then we would, once you've purchased the item or installed the charger or something like that, we'll get that final cost details and make sure that we're tracking everything. So if there's any grants on those items as well from the utilities or just any other federal grants, we need to know that so that we can make sure we're not reimbursing more than 100% of the cost. But that's just a little information. And again, please reach out to me if you have questions about fleet audits or zero emissions vehicles. Christina.
So 2024, there are a lot of changes to our incentives, and they've all gone up. It's really great news. So this year, so the summary is this, there's a lot of information here, but the summary is this is a great year to do projects. This is not an exclusive list, but a list of projects that our districts tend to work on. I was just going to highlight a few for you. So steam traps, the $400 to $500. If your steam traps are failing, they're failed open, then I have seen this incentive pay for the majority of a project, if not all. Roof insulation, if you're doing any roofing projects, this $2.85 a square foot. If your existing insulation is water damaged or it is there wasn't much insulation to begin with, you could be eligible. And this is one of those incentives that I actually can really rack up a large dollar amount. So I think my largest one for this last year, I gave a check for $175,000 or something like that for one site. So that's a big one, a big ticket one. Pipe insulation, I want to mention this, $25 a linear foot. I have seen a lot of districts take advantage of this. If you have any exposed piping, this should pay for 100% of the material and labor. And so I would definitely recommend, if you guys are looking for projects to do that, maybe you have to pay for the project first, but at the very least, you're going to get all that money back. Pipe insulation is a great one to do this year. We have wall insulation. We have the boiler incentive is really good. $6.50 per KPD. What does that mean? If you just send me what your new boiler you're thinking of installing, or even your nameplate of your existing boiler, I can tell you what that means for your boiler, since it's a little nebulous. For controls and HVAC, so we have the highest incentive rates that I've seen. I've been in the program for 7 years. So when we have to do a little study for controls and HVAC to determine how much energy you're going to save. And then we apply a rate in terms of how much savings, and what I think it's at this point, it's $5 per therm that you save. You get so much money. Well, it's almost double this year. So what I'm saying is any projects or incentives that we had for last year, it's actually going to be better off this year. So if you're thinking of any controls projects or HVAC projects, please reach out, because now is a great time to do a study and earn the highest amount of incentives that I've seen. Retro commissioning is always great. You could cover up to 90% of your project costs with retro commissioning. And I have seen, typically that's if you have existing controls, you're not upgrading your controls, but you're having some scheduling issues, issues with your set points, things aren't talking or working. We can pay for someone to come in and retro commission and fix some of those issues. And I have seen, these are typically pretty low cost projects, and I've seen them, hit that 90% project cost point. Lighting, Brian Morrison is on. He's going to talk about lighting more later, but suffice to say, with all of the changes in legislation, 2024 is going to be a great time to do lighting, really 2024 and 2025. If you have a project in mind, but you don't see it on here, please reach out. If you do have a boiler or some other project and you want to get more information on what makes it eligible, always reach out. So that's the whole point. You don't need to memorize any of this or any of the processes or anything like that we're talking today. As long as you're connecting with one of us, we will find the answer for you. Go ahead, Christy.
Okay, I'm going to check real quick for questions.
Christina, yes.
Mhm.
There was a question that Bruce had. It was specific, like you said, towards a excuse me, one of the bullet points that you had. If we are using an insurance claim to replace a boiler that is more efficient, can we submit reimbursement for our deductible?
Yes. Yeah, there's no requirement for you to have not be using your insurance. So we only care about the invoice and that it's installed and it meets the correct efficiency. So if you want to send me that boiler spec sheet, I could just confirm that it qualifies, so we can go from there.
Okay, I think that was it for questions. So
yes, it was.
Brian, you're up.
All right, let's talk about lighting and the changes that are coming to your facility. So there are significant changes coming in the next couple of years as a result of House Bill 2531. This bill was passed last year in the June of 2023 with the goal of reducing the environmental impact of mercury from fluorescent lamps. It also increased energy efficiency and make LED the standard for the replacement of fluorescent lighting. The House bill will ban the sale and distribution of these lamps. So first you have screw-in CFLs and bayonet lamps. As of January 1, 2024, this year, you can no longer purchase those in Oregon. Additionally, next year, linear fluorescence and pin-based CFLs, which make up probably 90% of the lighting in your facility, will be banned as of January 1st, 2025. It's really important to reiterate that this is a ban on the sale and distribution of these lamps. It's not for possession or for use of these. It does not mean that you need to convert all your facilities by this date. But what it does mean is you're going to see a change in the products you can buy. You're going to see a change in programs, particularly Energy Trust program in this light will be impacted, and the incentives that are available will be shifting. And it also means that you need to have a plan. what can you convert now and take advantage of the current funding and incentives? And how will you maintain your fluorescent lighting after January 1st, 2025? All right, next slide, please.
There you go.
Okay, so you're probably asking yourself right now, we have thousands of fixtures. How am I going to get them all upgraded? Is there additional funding for conversions? How can I maximize funding and resources to complete more upgrades? And I want to thank you for those questions. It's a great question. So let me give you my recommendations. Recommendations are that you start evaluating your facilities now. How many fluorescent fixtures do you have in your facilities? Which buildings have the most lamp and ballast failures? Which buildings are the least efficient, right? Do you have incandescent? Do you have T12 and other lighting that is a significant energy hog in your spaces, and you should target for upgrade as soon as possible? The other consideration I think that's really important is to consider whether you have remodels planned in the next 2 to maybe 5 years. Because what's important here is if you go in and you install a bunch of lamps today, you're gonna erode the savings for that project, which means that when you apply for incentives and things like that, you'll receive less money at that time. So this is one of those scenarios where you may want to look and create a plan about how you're going to maintain your fixtures in these spaces in the meantime. So once you do complete that upgrade, you can maximize the funding for your project. Next, of course, you have to prioritize those. You know, we covered a lot of that is, you know, least efficient, most failures, what fits your budgets. Another one that I think is really important is for you guys to work with us, and we can consider incentives and funding available. There are some projects that are going to receive more funding at this time, and therefore may be a great opportunity to take advantage and move forward sooner than later. The next part is that plan, and I'm recommending that districts plan for the next 2 years, right? What are those projects you can get done in 2 years? What are your top targets, possible targets, and then what stuff are you going to hold off on? It's really important that you guys partner with us. We can help you evaluate projects. We can help you maximize your funding, prioritize those projects. You name it. Energy Trust and the SB 1149 team work together to support you guys. So please take advantage of the resources that we can provide to help you guys through this critical time and transition. Important thing to know is that, as I mentioned earlier, is the Energy Trust program offering will be impacted by this legislation. Energy Trust will continue to offer incentives for lighting. However, you're going to see the program shift towards a focus on exterior lighting, and controls is going to be a really big one. We're talking about network lighting controls that allow your lighting system to communicate and connect with each other. Luminaire level lighting controls that include occupancy sensors and photocells, integration with building systems like your HVAC that can do demand response based on occupancy of a space, and really just going beyond that one-for-one retrofit that we've been incentivizing for years will be the new focus for the program. The good news is that Energy Trust has worked with the Oregon Public Utility Commission to develop an approach to support school districts and the market in 2024 and 2025. There has been a grace period created that will allow customers to upgrade existing lighting and take advantage of incentives for additional time after that ban. And what that looks like is in January 1, 2025, the ban will go into effect. And then you have another 6 months until July 1st, 2025, to approve your project with the program. And what that means is you have 6 months to get that approval. Once you lock in your project, you're locking in those incentives at that current rate. And then you have 1 year to complete that project. So essentially, you're going to get an additional 1.5 years if you can pre-plan and get projects approved ahead of time. That will allow you additional time to complete this work. So essentially, you would have until July 1st, 2026 to complete lighting upgrades with our current incentives. The other thing that's good news for school districts is that SB 1149 will continue to operate how it does until January 1st, 2036. you will be able to receive incentives for lighting projects through that program, even when you may not receive some of the incentives through Energy Trust. But the program at some point may look slightly different.
Okay. Very
All right.
good.
Thank you. So one thing I want to stop for a second with and just talk about is that with all the coming changes, it's important. It's easy to want to implement a solution right now. And I do encourage you to get started on those as soon as you can. But remember that lighting and quality of lighting is really critical in your facilities. Lighting affects employee and student satisfaction, performance, and health. If you're overlighting or underlighting a space, if you're installing fixtures that create glare or flicker, you're gonna impact your building occupants. So what I really like to tell people is that in spaces where people spend a lot of time, in your classrooms, in your offices, invest in quality lighting and design that is going to improve these spaces and ensure that you're not causing harm and you're maximizing the performance of the people that are occupying those spaces. A couple of things to consider when you're looking at your projects is to evaluate the spaces and the tasks that are completing those spaces. Design the lighting to meet the needs of those occupants and those tasks. Consider all your options. There's fixtures, retrofit kits, lamps, and definitely make sure you're considering controls as a part of a future of your buildings. And create a plan that incorporates a mix of these solutions. It also should be able to adapt to the changing needs of schools as those spaces are constantly evolving for what you use them for. So flexibility is important and investing in that long-term solution. Along with those recommendations, I just want to remind you that we're here to help. I work on hundreds of these projects every year, and I'm happy to lend my knowledge and experience to help you guys understand the projects you're looking at and figure out what meets your needs. So, as I've been saying, we're here to help. Please stay in touch with us in the program and take advantage of our resources. In the next couple of months, the program will be releasing new incentives for lighting. We're a bit behind at this point as a result of the bill that has required us to dive a little bit deeper into our measures, but we hope to be releasing those soon. And we'll keep you updated. I'll try to release that through OSMA and SB 1149, and however I can get in touch with everyone. So stay tuned for those new incentives. Hopefully, we'll definitely probably be seeing some increases with lighting as well. Another important thing to stay tuned for is we'll be at OFSMA, and at that time we'll be doing a presentation and providing updates at that time and continuing this conversation with you guys. So please stop by and see us at OFSMA. And then in last, we're going to be releasing 2025 program details at the end of this year. And so that will be important to stay up to date on as it will impact your projects in that last 6 months in the opportunity to get projects approved. And then last, of course, one more time, just don't forget we're here to help. We're a free resource to you and your team. We work on hundreds of projects each year, and we're here to help you with our skill and experience and help you maximize that return on investment and get more projects completed.
Okay. Christina.
So we've got a few different process flow documents. I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds here, but I wanted to tell you about kind of the differences between the three different processes and the ways in which we provide incentives. So our standard incentives include things that you would change out, like insulation, steam traps, waters, and boilers, things like that. Those projects don't actually have to be pre-approved. You can complete the install, your water heater breaks down, you hurry up and you replace it, and then you can work with me to complete the application. So it doesn't have to be pre-approved. And then anything that you send to Energy Trust of Oregon will be sent to Odo on your behalf so that you can take advantage of the SB 1149. So all you have to remember is, the Energy Trust is a little bit of the tip of the spear on both funding mechanisms, as long as you install the products that are qualified through the Energy Trust program. In order, it has to be qualified to receive Energy Trust incentives as well as SB 1149. I would recommend, however, I've had plenty of people install the wrong pipe insulation thickness, or maybe slightly off on their boiler efficiency and lose out on some incentive. I always recommend reaching out and asking myself or Colin, if you're in Eastern Oregon or Southern Oregon. You're installing pipe insulation. What is the requirement? This is my proposal. Does that meet the intent here? Just to make sure that you aren't missing something.
Perfect.
On the next one, we have custom. So anything that's not just a swap out like insulation or a water heater boiler, we're talking like large scale control upgrades, HVAC upgrades, retro commissioning, anything like that. We actually have to do a little energy study. I think I mentioned this before. The energy study is procured and paid for by Energy Trust. And so you don't have to worry about it on your end. We just have to create a little calculation to demonstrate what the energy savings are and what is the estimated cost. And from there, we can create a document that shows how much you'll receive in Energy Trust of Oregon incentives and how much you're going to receive in SB 1149 dollars. And we'll show you an example of that later. For lighting, there are actually two different ways to take advantage of our lighting incentives. The first is completing what's called our lighting tool. It's essentially our lighting application. That's when you work with Brian, and he will help you. He will shepherd you through the entire process for both Energy Trust and for SB 1149. This is great for, larger projects. You're changing out a classroom or a couple classrooms. You're doing an entire school. This is where you're going to get the largest amount of both Energy Trust of Oregon incentives and SB 1149 dollars if you move this method. So this is, primarily you would want to work with Brian. Go ahead and do the next one, Christy. But in the cases where you're just going to a Platt Electric and you just need a handful of LED lamps to replace, you can go to a distributor like a Platt or a North Coast, and you can just ask for the Energy Trust instant discount. You get paid, you can buy those LED lamps at a discount, and then that distributor actually does all the Energy Trust paperwork on the back end. So it is convenient. You will receive less incentive overall from that project, but it's very convenient if you're just, purchasing a few LED lamps. The other part of that is Odo doesn't automatically review those projects, so they'll have some of that information. But if you want to use SB 1149 for the labor part of the project or anything like any additional costs, you need to reach out to Christy Spoon on that one.
Perfect. Okay. These are a couple examples of the combined funding. Again, this is the kind of information that you'll see on a couple of the other documents that we send to you. But here's a couple examples. A controls upgrade. In this scenario, the estimated cost is higher than the 1149 max reimbursement, and I'm kind of pointing that out. So 250,000 is the cost. If the incentive, Energy Trust incentive, was 50,000, then again, 1149 funds would be maxed at that 150,000. So you're still getting 200,000 between both funds, but you'll have 50,000 out of pocket. So again, this gives you that breakdown, and most of this information you'll see on those documents, which I'll show you here in a little bit. For a lighting project in this scenario, the estimated cost is less than the maximum reimbursement through the 1149 program. So again, if it was 75,000, ETO's incentive was 25,000, we would give you 50,000 from 1149 funds, which between the two funds would cover the full cost. And part of this, I want to point out, when you have this scenario where you have a little bit higher of a max reimbursement, part of the reason why we're providing it is so, again, ahead of time what your maximum amount is from this fund. So let's say in this lighting project, the estimated cost was 75,000, but if it came in a little higher, maybe there was some additional costs that you didn't see at the very beginning, we can capture those additional costs as long as that information is submitted when you submit your final documentation and all that. Again, we can add it into the cost, and then we can increase the 1149 funds a little bit up to this maximum reimbursement amount. So again, that's just to be aware of those dollar amounts so that you know, again, where that maximum is. And this all breaks it out for you. So here's a couple of the documents that we would send you. One of them, the funding summary. Again, this is really small. It's not intended for you to read all the wording on here, but basically it's a table that provides for the measures that were analyzed. This is the document you would get after doing one of the studies that Christina was talking about. And again, it has the estimated costs, the max reimbursement, the energy trust incentive. It has all those dollars provided to you so that you can make that decision about moving forward or not. You know, essentially ahead. And again, this document, you would typically get it from Christina or Colin when again, that study has been completed. So you'll get that at the end of that, but before you move forward with the project. And then this other document, we kind of refer to it as the notice of measure eligibility. This would be more for the lighting projects or those standard incentives. So if energy or Odo gets that information ahead of time, we're reviewing those measures and those details to add them to the school's database. And then we send this information, and there's a section that's called funding summary. So similar to the other document, it provides those dollar amounts that we're talking about. And again, this could be sent to you ahead of time so that you know those that information ahead of time. But I will say for those standard incentives, in most cases, Christina and Colin are reviewing and doing all that information ahead of time. So Odo doesn't get that information for those standard incentives until the project's completed, just fully installed and everything. So we're in some cases, we send this document, but we're also at the same time telling you what that approved amount for reimbursement is. So it's kind of, normally we try to get this out ahead, but sometimes it comes at the end when you've already done the project. And this is a sample of an email. Again, it's not as cool as a check at the end of the project. From Energy Trust, they get to send you a check, but for 1149 funds, once we have received all of the final documentation, we've received all of the information from Energy Trust and what their incentives are, then Odo reviews and enters all of that into the school's database. Then we'll send an email similar to this to the school district to let you guys know that we've reviewed the information, entered it, and you're now eligible to reimburse X dollars. And again, we'll provide the measures in there that we're talking about. Unless it's a large amount, we'll attach a spreadsheet or something like that. But again, it gives you that approval at the very end to then transfer those funds out of that account at the district. Okay, Christina. And actually, we should check for questions again. So if anybody has any questions.
There's no new questions in the chat. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, that's fine. So if anybody has any questions, again, we'll come back in just a minute at the end because we're almost done, and you guys can unmute. But Christina.
Yeah, so how to get started, there's this email blurb here, this paragraph. We require that every school district provides this email. It basically just allows, it says the Odo and Energy Trust can work together on your behalf to be able to streamline this process the way that we've done in working with Energy Trust and having everything being sent over to Odo. Most of the folks on this call have already done that, but that is part of our process. The big deal is just, reach out to Colin or I or Brian on the lighting side. Really, if you reach out to any of us, we will get you to the right person. And so if you have any questions, there's a lot here. If you want estimates on what an incentive would be, what is the process, we can make that very streamlined for you based on the project that you're working on. So just reach out to us.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. There we go. And here's just a couple events, and I did add in the ballots and bonds. A couple events that Odo and Energy Trust will be attending or having a booth or something like that. So, and I guess the first one didn't need to be here. That's today. So just in case you guys are out, you want to stop by and say hi to one of us. There's Christina, Colin, sometimes Brian can join. So come say hi to us. or ask questions. And then our contact information. So yeah, again, we're all here to help. Again, if you have specific questions about your 1149 funds, you can reach out to me. If you've got questions about the process or the starting on the projects, or you're interested in a couple projects, but you don't know which ones might be eligible, again, you know, you can reach out to Christina, Colin, myself, any of us, and we'll get you started. So it's a great time for questions. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask away.
We do have one in chat. It said, hi, is funding for lighting or energy efficient projects available for administrative buildings as much as to school buildings? We rent most of our educational spaces, which would make our landlord responsible for implementation of energy efficient projects.
So again, for the 1149 program, again, the admin buildings are typically not eligible. Again, there are a few situations where a school district has an admin building that's being used for partially for students. In those scenarios, we sometimes count those district office or admin buildings, but for the most part, they're not eligible for 1149. But definitely you want to reach out to Christina. And Christina, you can talk about those if there's any issues with landlords or rentals.
Yeah, so we would have to, administrative buildings are absolutely fine. On the Energy Trust of Oregon side, we cover any building type. And we would just have to figure out if you are looking to do an upgrade or a tenant improvement within that building, or and who pays for the utility bill. So feel free to reach out to me directly, and then we can kind of figure out your particular situation.
Okay. Any other questions? Again, I will, with this recording, we will post one of the recordings either from today or yesterday, and we'll post the PowerPoint on our website. I will send an email with a link to those items. So all of you that have attended, that I've got email addresses for, I will go ahead and send out the links so that you can get them. And then, or whoever registered, we'll make sure you get an email with links so that you can get to that. But just remember, recordings are not always perfect. I'm not made for TV, so please no judging. Just listen, get the information, Any other questions?
Boy, the only other question that we had in chat, you answered right as they were typing it.
Yeah.
So you were right online with that.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Okay, well, again, we'll stay on here for a little bit longer just to answer any other last minute questions. But you guys, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, contact information for Brian. Yeah, we didn't have it on the PowerPoint, but Brian, do you want to add that to the chat before we head out? And then again, if you guys have any other questions, please reach out to any of us. I will go ahead and stop sharing.
It looks like Brian might have stepped out or,
Yeah.
oh, there we go.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
was multitasking. I was trying to unmute and type.
Perfect.
I'm sure that when we send the slide, the show out, the webinar out,
The links.
then we can include contact information for everybody in that also.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any other questions. So, okay. Well, have a wonderful day, everybody. And again, thanks for joining. And we'll get another email out with the links and contact information.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.